What is happening, everybody? I'm Larry Roberts.
And I'm Sara, and this is Branded, your comprehensive guide to creative branding.
And on this episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking about branding. How weird is that?
Oh my gosh,
That's
we're
crazy.
really mixing it up today.
Definitely changing up the pace a bit. But we've got us a guest here. His name is Dave Polykoff, and Dave has a very lengthy resume in startups, and he's the founder of his own business, which most of us are that listen to Branded, which is great. That's why we asked him to join us. So he started his career at an online reputation company called brand.com. So I see there's some cohesiveness here in this conversation. He founded the content marketing agencies Presto Media, Zing, and Zenpost, and has worked with brands including Yahoo, Ask, and this one was new to me, Panda Doc. I didn't know pandas needed docs very often, but hey, if there's an app for it, it's out there, and we love our pandas. So Dave, welcome to Branded.
Love it. That was a wonderful introduction. I forgot that I did all those things. So it was a nice reminder. And Panda Docs, pandas need documents too. And we were there to help get the word out amongst the panda community. So,
that's awesome.
Branding for all.
You're doing the Lord's work.
Like this is my acreage of bamboo right here. I've got a contract that says that. Here's my Panda Doc. Anyways.
Yeah.
So Dave, man, what's going on? Tell us about how you look at branding. I mean, I know that's a very, very wide open question, but just kind of give us the rundown and kind of how did you get into branding?
Yeah, well, I mean, I won't take you through the full story, but as you mentioned, one of the first startups and companies that I joined right out of college, actually while I was in college, was a company called brand.com. And it was online reputation management. So we were helping people with their online personas, and when you Google them, what showed up. And so like that was my first taste into how powerful the internet is and how powerful controlling your online perception is when it comes to just both online and offline. People, the first thing they're going to do when they meet you is Google you and see what your online resume looks like, right? So, we were dealing with doctors, lawyers, like big name celebrities, and that influenced their business and their career. And then that ultimately led to me starting my own content agency. And then that really evolved into Zenpost, which is where we work with, thought leaders, coaches, consultants to help shape their online persona, their messaging, and ultimately drive leads their way. And it all just feels kind of like a through line since the beginning of my career. So been always in content, always in branding, always in like content technology. So I have a strong like software background and building softwares and apps to support content. So it's like the nerdy side of me. And so I kind of just blended the two worlds together.
That's super cool. And, I love the fact that you have that through line. You worked for brand.com, which wasn't what a lot of people think is branding, and we fall into this trap all the time. People are thinking that it's a logo or it's a font or it's a brand guideline that outlines the colors of your brand. But you were really looking at online reputations, and that's what really makes up the core of our brand, right?
Yeah. And as I like to say, I mean, when you think of branding, you think of logos, right? And so you think of Nike and the swoosh and all that. And what I'm more focused on, and I think is kind of where the world is evolving to, is people want to buy from people instead of companies. And that's why on TikTok, all these like logo companies are now putting faces to the names through TikTok accounts, and they're kind of joining the conversation that way. But what I like to say is, your profile picture is your personal brand logo. And so these days, the branding, the logo really is just, your face in a way. So I think branding in a sense is evolving over time now, as we get more into like the individual as the business, which is just really exciting. That's the stuff that I really love. And I just, people being able to step away from maybe a career that they weren't happy with, and really just make a name for themselves with their own products and services and be kind of a me LLC. And so, branding in my eyes is really just taking the experiences you've had throughout your life, the knowledge you've obtained, the resources, the methods, the deep beliefs, systems that you have, and then translating that into products, services that other people can opt into and, learn from you. And that's kind of like the digital age we're getting into, is just really kind of democratizing the education of, being able to learn some of these big business things. So branding is important now from like the individual perspective, because if everyone's a brand, there's 8 billion people in the world and there could be 8 billion, personal brands. How do you differentiate yourself against the consultant coach next door? And that's where branding really comes in, because it's like, what's unique about you? What's your way of doing it? What's your ideology? What's the little quirks, personality quirks about you? What's your story that people are going to resonate more than the coach next door? So that's where branding really comes into play.
One of the things that I get asked about a lot is the difference between like a personal brand and a professional brand, like a business brand, and like how we have to go about things differently. And you, like we said in your intro, you've worked with some pretty big name companies, but now you're focusing more on the individual. What do you see being those biggest differences when you're building that personal brand versus when you're working for these big companies with their brand?
It's a really great question, and actually really timely, because I was just on a sales call yesterday. Someone who actually wanted to use Zenpost for a client of theirs, which was a business. And at the top of the call, I was like, well, we more so focus on individuals. And he asked the same question. He's like, well, can you still, apply the same services to a business? So it's very timely. But yeah, I would say it's very similar in the sense of there's still the core pillars that, are our core pillars for your strategy overall, what we call the personal brand blueprint, which is your messaging, understanding who your target market is and what their needs are and what your history as an individual or a business is, and then kind of combining those two things from a messaging and sales messaging perspective. The other things being like your digital billboards, online profiles, website, lead magnets and such. And then lastly is just the actual awareness of your brand. So content creation, content marketing, outbound engagements with other accounts and such. And all of that, I would apply the same strategies, very similar strategies at least, to businesses as I would brands or personal brands. But I think the core difference there is just from the individual's perspective, right? Because a company is more of a enigma of multiple thoughts and leaderships and VPs, and is, a accumulation of a lot of things. And then that needs to be distilled down to a few core things and then represented. While from like an individual, you're kind of looking at it just from like an individual story, what they personally went through, what their personal ideologies are. And so again, I see all of us, we should all be looking at ourselves as a business. So that's why those things correlate so well. But I think it's just more so, just more elements are involved in a business. There's more stories to be told from different individuals, the CEO's history, the founder's history, different departments and such. And just a lot of bureaucracy too, when it comes to, to businesses too. So there's certain things you can't say, the legal processes behind all that kind of stuff. And so it's sometimes limiting. But with individuals, you're representing yourself, how you want to be represented. There's no real bureaucracies there. So I think it's very similar, but it's really just kind of comes down to like which story is being told, whose story is being told. And also just from like a personal standpoint, why we switched from businesses working, B2B to working with individuals is because it's kind of that bureaucracy element. Is like when we would provide services to a business, it was like we were helping kind of like an entity grow, but we never really felt a connection between what we were providing and the end result. But when we work with individuals, like we see an individual's life change, like they're driving more sales, they're getting more revenue into their business, and like they're able to take time off of work, they're able to go on that vacation, they're able to support their endeavors and family. And we get direct feedback, like you've helped change my life. And that's been a large part of why we really focus on individuals now, is just kind of like that immediate ROI from us in terms of like seeing the impact and ROI of our services.
I was just going to say, it makes me think of like Small Business Week, when everyone's like really pushes for people to go shop small. And I've seen signs that say, like, when you shop at a small business, you help the owner's kid get braces, versus when you shop at a big company, you're helping the CEO get like another Ferrari.
Right.
And
Right.
it's
Yeah.
very similar. But it also makes me think, like, there's people that haven't really started that individual journey yet. And another thing that I get asked a lot is, when you're still working at a big company, how do you start building that personal brand without like crossing lines too much? Have you seen people do it well? Have you seen people do it poorly? Like, what would you tell people that want to start building that brand before they cut ties with their 9 to 5?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the idea of a lot of people who are in the W-2 9 to 5 profession, I think, default to thinking they don't need a personal brand because I'm not selling services, I'm not a coach, I don't have an offer or whatever. Our strong opinion is that's just absolutely false. Everyone really needs a personal brand, or at least control their perception online, largely because even though you're in a W-2 profession, you still need job security. You're still going for that raise. You're not going to be with that company forever, and you're going to be going maybe to your dream job, and you're going to be applying for that dream job somewhere else. And again, the first thing they're going to do is Google you. I mean, resumes are nice, but really it's, let me look you up online, see what you've done, see what your opinions are, and things like that. And so everyone, regardless of whether you're an entrepreneur or a W-2 employee, still needs a personal brand because it's going to pay off. And again, maybe in a couple of years, you want to venture out from the 9 to 5 and do your own thing. But yeah, I had that preface there that really just took me on a different direction. So I've seen a lot of people on LinkedIn who have been like VPs of content or heads of content at certain companies that have then started building their online brand through LinkedIn and showcasing what they've been doing for that company, and really started to invest into like their visual identity and things like that, and grown a following so much so that they've been able to have that following to then spin off and do their own thing. So they would leave that, probably 6-figure company, salaried position, to go do their own thing and spin off and be their own personal brand. And that process for them is really just kind of like documenting what they are learning at that company along the way. So it's really like demonstration. It's really, documentation of what they're learning along that journey. And a lot of times it's because they're in positions that are putting them in these like high level, high strategic, marketing campaigns where they need to be making these like really large decisions and have these large budgets and such. So a lot of it is just kind of like taking what your day-to-day is now, the ins and outs of the meetings, the campaigns you're leading, and then just translating that into knowledge on LinkedIn, mostly LinkedIn, just being that's like the most professional network. And again, it's just a lot of people, I think, get worried that, they have like the imposter syndrome of like, why me? Who am I to be voicing this right now? But a lot of people don't have the insights that they're having if they're in the positions where they're making some of these decisions. Again, like if you're leading a team, if you are leading a marketing campaign, those are lessons learned along the way. So largely, it's just a matter of kind of like translating your experiences into content, and then, grow that following. And if you reach a point where you feel as though you want to take that kind of entrepreneurial leap into the deep end, then you already have that following that's a trusted group of people that are kind of like listening and trusting everything that you're saying, so that when you go to generate an offer, then that's going to be the next step for them is they're going to say, okay, whatever this guy's selling, I want some of it.
I want to take it back a little bit, though, because I love what you were saying about the fact that it's never too early to start building that personal brand. And even if you're still married to your W-2, there's still that opportunity for building that personal brand within a corporate environment. And I'm a living testament to that, because I created a really, really bad brand in my corporate career. I was with the same company for 21 years. And the last probably 7 of those, I was freaking hating life. And I was not happy in my corporate position. we acquired a company, and one of the managers from that company came in and ended up, after we interviewed him. I was one of the guys that got to interview this cat, and all of us at the company said, yeah, don't hire this dude. And not only did they hire him, he became my boss. And so I was really, really pissed off about that for a very long time. And it showed. And it showed in my work. It showed in my brand. It showed in everything that I did at the company. And even when there came a time where I was like, you know what, I just need to change gears and get back on the horse and do my thing, it was too late. Because I had done so much damage to that personal brand, and I had so many subversive secret meetings behind closed doors about said manager that it bit me in the backside. So you have to keep that in mind all the time. And it comes down to the fact too, and you were saying this earlier, is that it's our values, it's our principles, it's how you appear online, it's how you appear on LinkedIn, it's how you appear on Facebook. It's everything, just like the title of my book, I got to get a plug in. It's everything that's under the red hat. The red hat is what people think is my personal brand. And to a degree it is, but it's really not. It's what gets me the attention so that then I can demonstrate my personal brand. And it's the same thing in a corporate environment. You're constantly delivering and you're constantly demonstrating that personal brand each and every day with each and every action or inaction that you take or fail to take. So I love the fact that you're driving that point home, because I couldn't support it more. So I think you were spot on there.
I mean, I had a very similar experience when I was working at the ad agency in Maryland before I moved to Texas. I was so just like done. I was so over Maryland. I was so over like the rut I was in that my heads of departments even said, it doesn't feel like you're trying to impress us anymore. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not, because I feel stuck. This feels so dead end to me right now. But one of the things you kind of said that I think is really important is people think that having a personal brand means you have to be selling something. You have to be wanting to be a coach or consultant or an entrepreneur. Your personal brand is just the like digital embodiment of who you are. And that is really important, even if you're just applying for another job. If you're trying to move into another position at a different company or move up in your company, the way that you present yourself online, the way that you showcase your knowledge and your skills and your experience, that's going to help you get hired somewhere else. It's not just about, I want to be that me LLC. It's, I want to be a higher position somewhere else. I need to prove online that I have what it takes.
Yeah. And I would say, I know a lot of people get weary of that, taking that jump into a personal brand, because they get a little concerned that they either have to do like, TikTok dance moves, or like, when they think of like influencer or, showing up online, they have the horror.
I think Larry still owes us a TikTok dance from like episode 2.
Oh,
I was supposed to do something. What was I supposed to do?
Oh yeah, you owe us a TikTok dance.
I know there was something I was supposed to do, but anyways, let's just let that slide. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you bringing that up, brother.
Documented now.
We got the Panda docs to prove it.
Yeah. See, that's what we did. TikTok dance moves for Panda Doc. But yeah, then they'll think like, personal content, like, oh, I have to take pictures of my kids and I have to talk about the vacations I'm taking, or they have to think like, well, maybe they do want to talk a little bit sales content, and people feel like very bashful about trying to be salesy online, or even just like informative content. They don't want to come off as a know-it-all, or like, shoving facts down your throat all the time and such. So it can be difficult to feel comfortable getting into content creation and starting a personal brand, because you might have the knowledge, the experience and such, but translating that into content that you feel comfortable with and in, is sometimes very difficult for people, especially like, video's huge, podcasting, LinkedIn has vertical video. They're pushing really hard now. So people see the value of showing up on video, but can be so uncomfortable pressing record. And so I think there is this like gap between people maybe knowing that they should start a personal brand, knowing that they should be creating content, but just not knowing how to translate what's in their head, translate their stories into content. So that's usually where, starting small, just starting with like commenting on other people's content because even comments is content, and then kind of working up the courage to start posting on your own.
Yeah, I think it's funny
Larry
because
Roberts is a fraud. Discuss.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, some cat. That's my one hater in there, and we love it. We love the fact I was a hater. Somebody posted that I was a fraud on what is it, Rumble? I think is what it was, or something like that. But anyways, God, now you got me. I had a point, and it's gone. Where was it? Oh, I think it was about creating content and being afraid to hit record. It's interesting because Sara and I just started recording some educational content, right? And actually, we did this yesterday. And with this educational content, it's scripted, right? We built scripts for it. Well, ChatGPT built scripts for us, but we were using scripts for this educational content. And after recording it, we kind of had this little epiphany in that we seem to be having more fun and seem to be more natural and more ourselves than sometimes when we're doing a podcast. Because we have these, and I've been doing this shit for 10 years. You've been doing it for 5 or 6. I don't know. It's a while. Yeah. So we have these preconceived, we'll just say years for Sara. Sara's been doing this for years. But we have these preconceived notions. We have these preconceived notions of how this is supposed to look, how it's supposed to feel. And it even takes me back 10 years ago when I recorded that very first podcast episode. And me and my co-host, Jamie, we had a Yeti snowball, which if you don't know what that is, it's a microphone by Yeti. And it's round. It looks like a softball, basically. But it's literally a round microphone. And we were so careful with everything we did. We enunciated every word clearly. We made sure there wasn't mouth noises when we were speaking. We wanted this to be perfect. And it was the biggest piece of shit that anybody's ever recorded in their lives. And we didn't even release it because it was so freaking bad. And I think that's just a testament to the fact that people they're hesitant to hit record. They're hesitant to create content because they have this preconceived notion of what that means. When really, it literally is setting up a decent environment. Sara's got an amazing studio office. I've got a fairly decent one. You got your own setup there that's awesome as well. And it's setting up an environment that's conducive to creating content and just talking, hitting record, getting excited about it, having fun. Don't put on airs. But I laughed a minute ago with Sara when you said that your bosses at the time said, it doesn't feel like you're trying to impress us anymore. That's because, bitch, we're not. We're not I'm not trying to impress anybody. Yeah, and it's just like that dude, the same dude, he called me a subordinate in the very first meeting we had. He goes, well, as my subordinate, you need to... Bruh, I ain't nobody's subordinate.
You've probably never gotten out of a chair faster.
Dude, no, and I got bad knees, but I still flew out of that chair.
Wow.
Hey, man, come on, man. So it's all about, it's not about impressing people. It's not about... what do we call it? Chain of command. It's all about just being yourself, having fun, creating content, and building that real brand, being who you are, and tapping into those core values and demonstrating that on a consistent basis, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're a W-2 employee.
Yeah, and obviously authenticity is like one of the keystones that you always come back to with personal branding for that reason, and so people can understand who you are. Do you share core values? And also too, if you're a coach or consultant or anyone that you're going to be spending time with, maybe you're a realtor, real estate agent, and you need to do showings with the person. If you're going to be spending time with them, whether it be virtual or in person, you also just want to like the person. So, showing up as your authentic self and just being natural helps people understand, okay, how are you going to be on a Zoom call? How are you going to be when we, meet up in person, or if you're a fitness trainer, like, when we're in the gym and things like that. So, translating who you actually are in real life onto camera, critical, just for the sake of you don't want the whole bait and switch thing. But it can be difficult a lot for people who are just getting started because they feel as though they need to come off a little bit more polished and professional because they're seeing people who have got the reps in and feel more comfortable in front of the camera. Like, I'm sure if we all go back to our first videos, we are not as polished as we are today. Or comfortable in front of the camera. I
mean, look at you 3 months ago. You were brand new, and now today you're a freaking pro. I mean,
well, I appreciate
your
that.
Your camera hasn't cut off one time.
Yeah. All right. I'm still learning about how to be on camera because I had my cat toy just went off 10 minutes ago. It's just, I need to lock myself in a chamber of quietness.
Love it.
But yeah, I interview people for my podcast, and when I see that they're really comfortable and great on camera, I'll ask them like, how did you become so authentic and natural on camera? And the number one thing I always hear is they just get the reps in. And over time you figure it out, and you stop looking at the camera as though it's your enemy. And it's a quote I heard the other day is in terms of like, how'd you become such a great speaker? And one of the mindsets that she discussed was the idea of like, okay, say you took a time machine back to you're on the Titanic, and it's like 30 minutes before the iceberg's about to hit, and you knew the iceberg's coming, right? You would go to everyone and you would voice what you knew with such like passion and energy, and it would just come across in such a way of like, I know something that is going to save lives. I need people to know what what I know.
First go to the captain. Go to the one driving the boat.
Bruh,
I would go to whoever that dude was, the ice bag straight ahead. I would just I'll get to that guy. Make sure he has his moment. But yes, I'd go to the captain and voice what I knew. And I love that like concept where, when you stop approaching it from like, what do I look like? Do I look good on camera? Am I coming across smart? And more so about the other person, like who you're actually trying to, educate and give value to. I think you come across a little bit more natural, just because like it's less about you and more about them. That just goes back to storytelling and telling what you know. I'm just gonna keep plugging.
I love that. I mean, people should really open this book.
Zing.
Link in the description.
Find it on Amazon, openthisbook.com. Anyway, I feel like a lot of people are trying to create the same content that everyone else is creating because they think like that's what they're supposed to do. Like this is what people are putting out. I have to put it out. But you said something about real estate agents before, and it made me think of there's a real estate agent on like TikTok, Instagram Reels, whatever it is. No idea what his name is, but all of the real estate agents, you see them going through a house just like, this is the master bedroom and look at this like ensuite and like, that's great. I don't want a house right now, so I'm not even paying attention. But there's this one real estate agent that makes me pay attention because he's so authentic and so funny. And instead of just like, this is how amazing the house is, it's like, y'all, I got to pay my bills. Someone buy this house. Look, there's a bathroom. It's great. But seriously, someone buy this house. Right. I've got a car payment to make. Like, it's so funny because it's so real. Like, we all get that. We all get like, yeah, no, I want to make this seem really great. But the whole point, I'm here because I need y'all to pay me. Like, I need to make some money. And it's just so authentic. And it's so different than the rest of the content that is being put out in that niche. And I'm not in the market, but I watch it.
I'll buy a house from him. I don't need to buy a house.
100%. There's a dude that sells cars that just caught my attention, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. And he's stitching in the popular video memes. And then he cuts it off and he goes, yeah, that's great and all, but I got this right here, 2021 Jeep Cherokee that's ready to rock and roll. Come see me. And he just ties them in so seamlessly that he's capitalizing on the popularity of a meme and then going, yeah, whatever, that's bullshit. This is what you need to worry about. You need this 21 Jeep Cherokee right here, so come holler at me. And I love that dynamic interaction and the way that he's using content in a very unique and very authentic way. And I've sent his videos to all my car sales buddies because I'm like, bruh, you need to do this right here to get the attention that you're after instead. Because I've got some friends that are in the car business and they'll go, oh, thank you to so-and-so for buying this new ride from me. It's so great to have you as part of the Dodge family or whatever the hell it is. And that's great and all. It's give them props and all that fun stuff. You might get some referrals, but it doesn't get attention on social media. You know, they end up with 1 or 2 views, which are their friends or the person that bought the car that's engaging with the post. But if you do something that's creative, if you do something that's authentically you, that you tap into that creativity, you get that attention, you get that engagement. And I'd be willing to bet that dude that started doing these videos, I guarantee he's salesman of the month. I guarantee it.
I think one of the key things with like, yes, authenticity and all of that, but the unexpected piece of it, like everyone expects those, thanks for buying this car from me. Everyone expects those, here's a house tour of what's on the market. People aren't expecting like that to come after some ridiculous meme. People aren't expecting the like, I don't care about this house, guys, just buy it because I'm broke. Like those are things that people don't see coming. And I mean, I talk about this in my book, Open This Book, available on Amazon. But I talk about one of the key pieces of being compelling in your storytelling is you have to make it unexpected. And it's so important, even in content creation, do something different, do something that we don't see coming. And it's
Yeah, and
going to be so much easier to resonate.
I think the reason we're seeing a lot of copy paste is because it's easier to see what a competitor or someone in the industry is doing that's working and going, okay, then I'll just do that. And
If it ain't broke,
unfortunately,
don't fix it.
yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of times that still does work. That's a lot of the creator economy is just like, especially you see it on TikTok, is like if there's a trend going on and people are getting millions and millions of views on it, they're going to hop on it too. Or even if it's just a video that did really well, they're just going to like copy it, copy paste and literally like word by word do it. And to a degree, there's some strategy in there in the sense of like if something's working, do your variation on it, because obviously that resonates, whether it be the topic or the format or whatever. But yeah, it's just when the whole industry kind of it's like a school of fish that all just kind of swims together, and you just continue to see the same types of content. So it really takes you got to applaud the people that really do get creative with that kind of stuff and go, you know what, like this is who I am. So I don't care what everyone else is doing. This is who I am. And this is how I'm going to approach this content. And if it works, it works. And I think you early on in your content journey, it's good to see like what's working, try your hand at that type of format just to kind of understand what it means to create content, the process of content. You don't need to be this like creative genius right out of the gate. I think it's best to really just understand the process of creating content and staying consistent with it and understanding why a piece of content did better than another piece, and just like have the training wheels on for a bit. And then as you find your voice, as you get like comfortable in front of a camera, as you understand how to work a camera and all that kind of stuff, an editing tool and all that kind of stuff, then you can start getting a little bit more creative. And I think eventually you'll find something that just hits, and then you double down on that and you kind of continue to be in that lane. And I think that's why when you see these people who are doing something so unique, I can guarantee that wasn't like what they did for their first video. I'm sure they kind of built themselves into that, found that, oh, my audience really loves when I do this. And then they just kind of double down on that over time.
Even with the things that are trending, like those trends that everybody does, the ones that I see that I'm just like, okay, that was really cool, are the ones that take a trend, but then flip it to have something that is still unexpected. Like you see all of these videos that are young girls dancing, but then you see the same dance being done by someone's grandmother. And I love those videos because it's like, okay, I've seen a million like 20-something-year-olds do this, but here's an 80-something-year-old doing it and I'm worried she's going to break a hip. But it's so funny because it's so unexpected. So anything you can do, stop giving me that look, Larry. Anything you
that's
can
ageism,
do.
Sarah.
I'm
what
loving the
your
content. I'm
algorithm is,
concerned for her health. You don't want to know my TikTok algorithm. It is just a mess.
If you're watching 20-something-year-old girls dance, I do want to know your algorithm. Yes, actually.
That is personal. But seriously, when you can take a trend that everyone is doing and you can find a way to add an element that is unexpected, it's going to do so well because people they watch it knowing like, okay, I know where this is going, but then it doesn't go there. And that's what people love.
Yeah. I mean, a large area channel of focus for me is LinkedIn, and there's only videos becoming a little more and more popular on there, but largely like the types of content you'll see on LinkedIn is really just like text posts, selfie photos, carousels, like infographics. There's certain content that performs better on LinkedIn than others, but it starts to come down to more so like visual identity than it does. I mean, the content is always important, but to stand out, there really are no like trends on LinkedIn as much as it just like what type of content, what format of content performs better than others. But then what's going to stop my scroll is really where the branding element comes in. And I think that's a large part of like visual identity. And in fact, I just worked with a visual identity designer to draft mine a couple months ago, and I wanted to invest into my brand's visual identity so that I can stand out, in a LinkedIn feed, being that it's tough to really like stand out otherwise because there's not a lot of uniqueness that you can do in that LinkedIn feed. I wanted to ask too, because I know you mentioned the red hat is like your kind of like key brand identity there, as like the visual identity. Was that a conscious decision? Did you just start wearing it and then got known for it? Like, how did that end up being the
I
thing?
appreciate you asking that. And actually, it was an accident, 100% accident. If you look here behind me on this side of the screen, you'll see a Supreme hat in a glass case, because that was the birth of the red hat. I had a speaking engagement at the Emily Arena in Tampa, Florida. And it was a younger audience. And well, I still think I'm 25, even though I'm not. So I was rocking my Supreme hat. I was rocking my Rock Revival jeans. I was rocking my Jordans. So I was really just a billboard of brands. And I gave the talk, came down, and a good friend of ours, Alex Sanfilippo, he and I, we speak on the same stages most of the time. We give each other shit every time we come down, just boys hanging out, And he goes, but for real, why are you wearing that Supreme hat? And I told him I'm just trying to be cool. And he goes, hey, man, are they paying you? And I'm like, bruh, I'm a middle-aged white male. They'd pay me not to wear it, if we're being honest here. So he goes, then don't wear their stuff on stage. Don't wear somebody else's merch on stage unless they're paying you. He goes, but I love the red, because although you can't tell here, I'm about 6'3" and about 240. And so I'm a big guy. And he goes, with that red hat on, you're like a beacon. I can see you all the way across the arena. So it really made me stand out. So I went home, tossed the Supreme hat to the side, bought a $6 unbranded red hat. And within a few months, I was the red hat guy in the podcast industry. And then a few months later, the AI industry, it just continued to evolve. And the red hat is where it's at. So now all of my branding is black and white, except for the red hat. The red hat's always there. And it's landed me speaking gigs. It's gotten me clients. It changed my life, literally. And it's only been, 3 years, Sarah?
Something like that.
Yeah, about 3 years. And it just changed everything once I found this identifier. And, we talk about authenticity. It just happened to be red, but I always wear hats. So it's just a natural
and you don't
thing.
even like red.
Yeah, and red's not even my favorite. Blue's my favorite color, so I did work some blue into the background here. But I just, I don't hate red, you know what I mean? But it really wasn't my vibe. But from that perspective, but I adopted it just perfectly fine. And I've, again, always wore hats, so it's super, super natural for me. And it just works. It just works. So, and it's probably about 4 or 5 months after that talk, I was at Bitcoin Miami in Miami, Florida. Massive conference, 30 some odd thousand people in attendance over 3 or 4 days. And over those 3 or 4 days, I was there as a podcaster, content creator. Multiple people that I didn't even know walked up and said, aren't you the podcast guy? And I was like, yeah, how'd you know that? And they go, the red hat. And I was like, holy shit, this is 100% legit. So changed the business name, changed everything, and that's it. And so the red hat is my gig.
I think it kind of goes back to it's your logo. I mean, red hat, standalone, sure, but like all of that, is the logo, right? Like it's all, if you were to take a silhouette of that, it's still you. So yeah, I love that concept. Yeah, and I have a buddy.
See, my little guy.
There you go. See, I thought I was in the branding game, but I don't have a bobblehead of myself. So
I didn't buy it. It was a gift. So I'm not that.
I got to reach.
My ego's not that big. I didn't buy it myself. So
okay.
Isn't that also from Alex?
That actually, it's from Alex and a few others. They pitched in to get me this. So I think this was my birthday last year, maybe. I think year before last.
2 years ago.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, it's fun.
That's awesome.
I
would say I have a buddy who also deeply invested in his personal brand online, and his thing is confetti. And that's kind of like the thing that he's taken and used as like his shtick. So all of his social content incorporates confetti. He works with staff, he oversees staff, and uses confetti in real life to kind of like boost morale. And it's kind of like a symbol for him. And it just kind of like happened organically. And and now it's just like, he has a business and a book that incorporates the concept of confetti. So it's like throughout his entire brand. And I asked him, he actually was on one of my podcast episodes. It was the first episode of my podcast episode show. And I just like asked him like where that came from. Like, how did you, that's so unique. It makes you stand out in the feed, and just like such a nice cohesive thing to do from like a branding perspective. And he like, same thing. He's like, it just kind of happened. It stumbled upon it or whatever. And then it just stuck and he went with it. And yeah, so I think in terms of like anyone who's trying to like find their shtick, I know some clients we work with, we've worked with a couple of like lawyers who are, with lawyers, they always want to be the something lawyer, like that little shtick that they can put on the billboard or whatever. And, they're like trying to rack their brain about like, what can be like my thing that I can put on the billboard and, that brand. And like, it kind of just has to like come to you in a way. It can't just be that thing that you like workshop on a whiteboard one day or whatever. So yeah, it's funny how those things
I spent a lot of time workshopping becoming the girl with the penis tattoo.
yeah. One drunken night.
Yeah,
that was a lot of personal and professional brainstorming. I brought in a branding coach and everything, and they're like, "Yeah, totally become the girl with the penis tattoo.
That's it.
Really well."
You brought up lawyers, and I think it's hilarious. If you want to see a really cool lawyer, his name is Brian Wilson. He's the Texas Law Hawk. And he is one of the most creative lawyers I've ever seen in my life. He has some of the best videos. They are insane. And he just works in that whole hawk theme. Not Hawk Tua, by the way, just the hawk, the bird. So
yeah, that's trademark.
Yeah, it's Hawk Tua is a whole other gig. But the Texas Law Hawk, I had a podcast, I don't know, a long time ago, and actually had him on the podcast, and it was hilarious. He's so creative. His content is so next level, and it just stands out because, I mean, you see all these other lawyers chasing ambulances on commercials and doing this and that to get attention, but this dude just takes it to a whole nother level, and it shows you what you can do if you do stumble on or find that niche that you fit into that's a natural fit for you, and you get creative with your content. So, Brian Wilson, if you're listening, hook a brother up. Let's do some sponsorships. So anyways, Dave, man, I love this conversation. I always love talking to other branding experts. Before we wrap it up, if you were going to give us one little piece of advice to find our brand, because before we hit record, we were talking about, on this episode, we're going to talk about mistakes that branding make, people that are trying to create brands tend to make. We didn't really go down that path 100%. But if there is one thing that you saw was the biggest mistake that people made, what would that be, and what could they do to change that?
Yeah, I think the number one mistake for people who are trying to go from 0 to 1 is really trying to bite off more than they can chew too early. When we say go from 0 to 1, we literally mean go from posting nothing to just like posting at least one post in a week, right? And we talked about it earlier in this podcast, but the idea of starting small so you can understand the foundation of what makes good content, and studying other people's content, dissecting like the formats and the topics and seeing what works. And that takes time to really master and understand, especially when you're creating like content in front of a video and understanding how a camera works, backdrops, all that kind of stuff. It can feel overwhelming, and you feel like you can't start until you have like the sexy studio or like the really nice brand design, visual brand design. But really, it's just start as simple as possible and work your way up to, that status that you see some of your other favorite creators do. And, again, we mentioned earlier as well, starting simple can just mean showing up and commenting on other people's content and finding what your voice is, what opinions you actually have. In fact, I find that sometimes the best way I come up with topics is going on to other creators' accounts, consuming their content, and then saying, what opinions do I have on this topic, or what do I have to say about what they're saying, and then replying in like a really insightful way on that post. And that's just like warming you up to getting the idea of like, what do I have to say? Do I actually have strong opinions on this? And then when you go to actually create content, is start small. Don't worry about the fancy like designs and video edits and all that kind of stuff. If you're not technical, don't edit, don't try to create video right out the gate. Start with text posts and start with, a couple posts per week, and then work your way up. A lot of times people just try to become their favorite creator right out the gate, and they fumble on the idea of, I need to figure out how to use all these softwares and these camera setups and the studio setups, and they get too bogged down in the stuff that actually doesn't matter.
Super cool. And I can't agree more. And I watched a video this morning talking about podcasting and how, this whole podcast thing, it's just getting out of control. And what we're seeing, in the industry is roughly there's 5 million podcasts that are out there, thanks to the COVID creators that jumped on board. But here's the kicker. Only about 17 to 18% of those are active. So people jump in there and they try to be the next JRE, or they try to be the next Your Mom's House, or That's How This Works, or whatever their favorite podcast may be. And then they realize all the work that goes into it, and it becomes extremely intimidating. It becomes extremely overwhelming. And then they pod fade and they're gone. So I love the fact that you're talking about just taking little bites at a time. Just start. Comment on a post, create a little content, and then build and build and build. So, Dave, I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you both for having me on. And sorry for all the additional technical difficulties that I always have during these things, but for bearing with me. It was a great combo.
Hey, I thought it was great. And we didn't hear Sarah's dogs bark today. So I think that's the first in the last probably 40 episodes. So we're all making progress. So, Dave, where can people find you, man?
Absolutely. So yeah, if you want to learn more about what I do and who I do it for, the best way would be just to link up with me on LinkedIn. Again, name's Dave Polykoff. I'm sure the link will be in the description. But yeah, friend request me, say that you found me from the Branded podcast. So I know you're a loyal listener. And chat on there and we can exchange info, and I can kind of show you what I do by just looking at my own personal brand on LinkedIn. Otherwise, check out my personal brand agency, Zenpost, at zenpost.com. And that'll give you all the information about the services we provide coaches and consultants to launch their personal brand blueprint.
Also, don't forget to go listen to his podcast, Brand Science.
Yeah, I have to remember that now that
Particularly
I have my own podcast, by the way, Brand Science, and now I'm becoming a guest on other people's podcasts, and I have to remember I have to plug my own podcast. So appreciate that there.
She's always looking out. Hey, everybody, talking about looking out. If you found some value in this episode, look out for us by hitting that subscribe button so we can continue to bring you these amazing episodes with these wonderful guests each and every week. And until then, I'm Larry Roberts.
And I'm Sara Losi, and we'll talk to you next week.